Jesus was in Jerusalem. He was walking by the pool of Bethesda. And this pool, fed by an underground spring, is down off the street, surrounded by porticos, offering some shade and shelter. And legend had it that on occasion, an angel would trouble the waters of the pool, and the first person into the water would be healed. So the pool and the surrounding area had become a gathering place for anyone with some sort of illness, but especially the blind and the lame and the paralyzed. All gathering around, watching the surface of the water for the slightest sign of a rippling of the waves. And you can imagine how a small bubbling from the underground spring or even a slight breeze might cause a stampede of invalids trying to be the first in the water. When one of those porticos, as John's Gospel has it, Jesus struck up a conversation with a man who had been ill for 38 years, lying there beside the pool, but he can't get to the water, certainly not first, and not on his own. And so for all these years, he lay there on his mat all day long, and we can imagine that it had become kind of a way of life for him, living with healing just out of reach. Jesus asked him, "Do you want to be healed, to be made whole?" Well, of course he does. Why else would he be dragging himself there to the pool every day for all of those years? But what can he do? So he says, "I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up. And while I'm making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Maybe there's some defensiveness there. It could be he was used to being blamed for his own illness. We know that was a common view in his day. Or maybe he heard in Jesus' question a suggestion that he ought to try harder, to think more positively, to be proactive. But he wants to point out to Jesus that no, that's not it. It's the scarcity of resources, that is, no one to help him, and circumstances that prevent his healing. Everyone else gets there ahead of him. Now, this is one of those conversations with Jesus in John's Gospel, which is a wonderful thing about John's Gospel, that it isn't really about what it seems to be about. Like Nicodemus, who couldn't understand how a grown man could enter his mother's womb and be born from above. Or like Mary and Martha, whose brother Lazarus had died, and if Jesus had only been there sooner, maybe he could have done something to prevent it, when it wasn't about Lazarus dying, but about how God bringing him to life. So the man in this story thinks they're talking about the pool, and about how many people are elbowing each other toward the water, and about how hopeless the case is. But Jesus isn't talking about the circumstances of the man's long days at the edge of the pool, but about taking up his mat and walking. This is what Jesus tells him, and the man does as he is told. He takes up his mat and begins walking. Now, a few things about this. The man doesn't ask for healing. The only question comes from Jesus. Do you want to be healed? The man doesn't reach out to Jesus for help. He doesn't know anything about it except that he asks personal questions of strangers. The writer of Ephesians praises God, who is able to do abundantly far more than all we can ask or imagine. This is the God whom Jesus reveals here. The man didn't ask for a healing. He couldn't have imagined the events that would unfold. It's also interesting, I think, that there is no mention of faith in this encounter. What the man believes or where he places his trust doesn't even come up. It does in other stories of healing in the Gospels, but not here. All we hear from this man is that although he has learned not to expect the system to meet his needs, he keeps coming back to the pool. Maybe a slim chance is better than none. And so alongside of a pool known for its healing waters, its long line of cutthroat invalids, we have a healing with no pool, no lines, no waiting. After 38 years, the man's waiting is over. The time of healing is now. No waiting for the water to be stirred or for a turn in line, even for the sun to go down on the Sabbath so that the healing of a chronic condition is not controversial, which it proved to be. Jesus speaks to the man picks up his mat and he walks, and there's more to the story, but most of it can be summarized with Jesus' explanation of his actions. He said, "My Father is still working, and I am also working. As long as God is working, so am I." Jesus obviously cared about this man, but apparently he didn't care about what had prevented the man from getting to the pool for healing. At least that's not where his healing and his wholeness is to be found. There's no more waiting for conditions to change and resources suddenly becoming available, or waiting for the environment to become more favorable. No, God was at work now, and now is the time for healing, for wholeness, for the kind of transformation that gets us up off the mat and walking again. He had a chronic condition, you might say, that he'd been living with for 38 years. For better or worse, he had learned to live with it. And you might say we all have a chronic condition. No matter what the condition of our physical or mental health or well-being, this condition manifests itself in all kinds of ways, both in individuals and in groups of all kinds. Scripture has a name for this condition. Of course, Scripture calls it sin. Kind of think of that as a sin with a capital S, to distinguish it from the individual sins we might commit. It's a condition. It's chronic. St. Paul writes that if we claim it isn't, that we're without sin, we're kidding ourselves. All have sinned, he says, and fallen short of the glory of God. Now, this isn't new news to us. It's basic to our Christian confession, Christian understanding. So basic, perhaps, that it hardly bears mentioning, and in many places it isn't. It's a chronic condition, so we figure out ways to live with it. In some ways are ritualistic, like our weekly prayer of confession. In the long Jewish and Christian traditions, as well as other faiths, there are many rituals and seasons, as we know, of sacrifice and penance that acknowledge our sinfulness. And these are important because, as Paul wrote, our sin is ever before us. But the question to all of us, I believe, is the same as Jesus' question to the paralyzed man. Do we want to be healed? Do we want to be made whole? The condition may be chronic, but like women who have experienced abuse or cancer patients who struggle with their illness, do we want to live as victims of the condition or as survivors? Just as Jesus didn't care about the circumstances that kept the man from healing, so maybe he doesn't care so much about the conditions and circumstances that we might get stuck on or hold on to keep us from fullness of life, from abundant life, that keep us on the mat. He cares about us, about our healing and our wholeness, because that's how God's glory is revealed. It may be that the man who'd been lying on this mat by the side of the pool for all those years had become rather accustomed to living in this way, just out of reach of healing. It might be that he had a pretty good view of the proceedings, a good vantage point from which to nurse his own victimization, waiting for others to come to him, for God to come to him there on the mat with all this stuff around him. Of course, there's all kinds of mats. We can grow quite accustomed to remaining on them. And we say we want to change, to get up, to walk in fullness of life, when maybe what we really want is to remain the same and just feel better about it. Pride and self-deception can keep us planted right there on that mat. The church can be held from its witness, its mission in the world, by focusing on the resources that it doesn't have, on the people that it doesn't have, and all the circumstances that explain why so many churches these days find themselves on the mat and can't get up. In the next couple of years, you'll be working and planning to call a new pastor. Work has already started. Understand the demographics of the wider community, as well as your church community. It feels strange to be saying "your" in reference to Pebble Hill, and since for so many years I've referred to this faith community as us and we. But you will get through this, and I will get through this, and we will get through this. Change is difficult, and transitions are difficult. But of course they are both inevitable and necessary and filled with potential and possibility. And if our faith tells us anything, it tells us that our God is a God who calls us, who lures us toward wholeness, toward fullness of life, toward the new thing that God is doing. Now, after 26 years together, I think it's safe to say that in some ways, we've grown rather comfortable on our mats. Ways of doing things, ways of being together, ways of serving. And from that position, from that perspective, which again can get rather comfortable, the world around us may seem not to be very open to or receptive to what the church has to offer. The tendency is to try to figure out ways for more people to join us on our mats. And that can take up a lot of time and energy. Because there are myriad reasons, causes, cultural, generational, theological, why the church as we have known it has declined in the ways that it has. Diagnosis is important because we need to know what we're dealing with and why. There's no end to the number of books and studies that have been devoted to the diagnosis. We've read a lot and studied a lot of them here together over the years. But it's easy to get stuck in a posture of victimization by diagnosis alone. Jesus apparently didn't care about the circumstances that kept the man who lay by the side of the pool for 38 years from healing. God was at work. God is at work. And as long as God was at work, then Jesus was at work. And as long as God is at work, we, you, and I are to be about the work of God's healing and wholeness in the portion of creation in which God has placed us. It seems to me that today's gospel lesson is telling us that Jesus wants all of us to participate in our own salvation and to enable and empower others to participate in theirs. That it doesn't matter how long we've been on the mat or even why we're there. We are all at the pool in need of the one who can take us to that holy and healing place. And there are others we can accompany along the way. Not only does Christ want us to participate in our own salvation, but to journey alongside others in their walk toward wholeness. Healing is out of reach for any of us alone. Whether it's the mats of our own making, or the conditions of the world that press people down, Christ works through us to bring his healing and hope to the world. Soon, not too long, you'll have some new eyes, fresh perspective on the world of need and others to accompany on the way to healing and wholeness. Things will look different, as they should. You will bring your love, your commitment, your gifts to this new journey. You are and will be even more prepared to offer your guidance and perspective as a people who love and serve God and neighbor with open hearts and hands and minds. For remember, as Teresa of Avila said and wrote years ago, Christ has no body now but yours. No hands, no feet on earth but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks with compassion on this world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands through which he blesses all the world. May it be so, to the glory of God. Amen.
Amen.